Next in line is Sue Sentence. She comes from the land of steak and kidney pie and rain, which obviously then is the United Kingdom. And you have a presentation is working, wonderful. So I'll just hand it over to you. Very welcome to Sweden. And
thank you.
Let's go.
Good morning. My name's Sue Sentence, and I work at King's College London part of the time, and I train new secondary computer science teachers for my job. And another role that I have is I work with computing at school, who I'll talk about later, supporting in-service teachers who are delivering the computing curriculum. And I have one comment on Larry's presentation, that is I train new teachers and they have to reach 8 teacher standards, and teacher standard 4.2 or something is promote a love of learning. So we have to do that in England and stimulate children's intellectual curiosity. I'm assuming that you're aware that we have had some change in England in our curriculum. We had a new curriculum in September 2014, and we had a new subject called computing, which replaced an existing subject which we used to call ICT, Information and Communications Technology. And I'm here to talk about that. You're probably aware of it because there's been lots of headlines and lots of media interest about that change. So that's a headline from the BBC. The BBC, we've got a computing revolution in schools. That's great. I like that. And then we've got another headline, coding in the classroom. Schools across England introduce coding in the curriculum. And we've had loads of headlines like this. It's all about coding. Every child from 5 has got to learn to code. Lines of them in computers, tapping away. It's not really about that at all. Here's another headline from the Economist. A is for algorithm. That's a bit more like it. We are introducing understanding about algorithms into the curriculum. Algorithm is a word that exists in our new programme of study for children aged 5 years old, because it's not all about coding. And here's another headline, and it says, I was just squared a bit, but is Britain ready? So I'm aware that lots of people are looking at what's happening in England to see how are we coping with this change? Are the teachers able to deliver this quite high-stakes curriculum that we've set up for ourselves? So I'm going to divide my talk into 3 parts. I'm going to talk about briefly what has changed. If you were here yesterday and heard Oliver speak, there might be a little bit of overlap on that. A little bit what has changed, why I think that's important, and then I'm going to talk about how we're doing with particular reference to how teachers are reacting to the change, how we're supporting teachers. So first of all, what is the situation in England? So it didn't just happen overnight. We have had ICT in the curriculum for some time. We had computer studies back in the 80s, and we've been teaching children in school from the age of 5 how to use a computer all the way through the 90s and the early 2000s. And then we got to come to the understanding that our curriculum was a bit out of date, and that we were teaching in school some of the things that children actually could always pick up for themselves. And then Computing at School, which is a sort of a grassroots organisation, started in 2008 and started thinking about what would we have in a curriculum if we were going to teach computing. So then we had the big visit from Eric Schmidt, and we had the Royal Society report and various other changes. And then we get to the 1st September 2014, where there is we eventually get the new curriculum in place. So that's a year and 2 months ago. At the same time as having the new curriculum for computing, we have a new curriculum for other subjects, and it's a very slimmed down curriculum. It runs to about 3 pages per subject. This is different from a lot of other countries. So these are the aims of the curriculum. If you look at those aims, 2 of them relate to computer science, 1 more about information technology, and then an aim about digital literacy. But underlying that are these kind of key phrases, the fundamental principles and concepts of computer science, including abstraction, logic, data representation. It's about the concepts of the subject. It's not all about technology. It's about problem solving, understanding how to work analytically, and it's also about being creative. And it's there for children aged 5 to 16. It's one of the few subjects that actually is compulsory from 5 all the way up to 16. And we have a focus in the curriculum on computational thinking. That's those sort of wider skills that are useful across the curriculum. And just briefly, I'm just going to highlight, this is the totality of what it is in the programme of study for the children aged 5 to 7. And this says what they should be learning in those 2 years underneath the topic of computing. And yes, they have to understand what algorithms are. There are a lot of arguments about whether we should have the word algorithm in a programme of study for 5 to 7-year-olds. But they have to learn a lot of other technical terms. They have to create and debug simple programs, but they have to also use technology safely. But that is the extent of the guidance that we're given, and then the resources that people develop flesh out what's in there. So it's not a deep, layered curriculum. When we move up to 7 to 11, we'll see that that's actually, we've got a little bit more in there. The previous Key Stage 1 curriculum actually is not too different from what we had before. There's a lot more new in this ages 7 to 11 curriculum, because students are learning a little bit about computer networks. They are learning visual programming languages. It mentions that they should use selection if statements and loops in their program. So these are some quite explicit things that are in the curriculum. And then we get to age 11 to 14, and I've just highlighted a few things on there. Children by the age of 14 should be able to use 2 or more programming languages, one of which is a textual language. They should understand some Boolean logic. They should understand how computer systems work, how instructions are stored and executed in a computer system. So there's quite a lot in there. And that's really why we've been the focus of all this interest, because people are looking at what's in our programme of study and saying, well, how are you going to get your teachers to teach that, and how's that going to actually work in school? So before I get onto that, I'm going to talk about why I think that's important. That's a significant change from what we had before. We had a curriculum that was very much looking at whether technology and software was being used in a way that was fit for purpose, fit for the audience, was more evaluative. This is a bit more nuts and bolts, this curriculum. Why is it important? I've got 4 reasons why I think this is important. I should say I am a huge fan of the computing curriculum in England. First of all, I think it's important because computer science is a discipline in its own right. It has academic rigour. It has principles and concepts. Peter Denning wrote about the 7 great principles of computer science. What can be computed? What can be automated? How does computing communication work? These things are important. We've heard a lot about how technology is going to change. When the children leave school, the technology will all be different. This stuff won't. This is the principles of the subject, and that's what students need to know. The second reason I think is important is I think that we need to underlie what we understand about technology with what we understand about the ideas underlying the technology. So as well as read and use technology, we want to write and create things for ourselves. As well as we have to use, we need to be able to understand. And then there's this whole idea about magic. I mean, a lot of the students that I've dealt with in the past, I used to be a teacher of computing, would just think, oh, it doesn't work because it does work because it's magic. What goes on inside of my phone, it's nothing to do with me. But it's taking away that magic, remove the magic, and then replace that with some understanding and knowledge of what's going on. The third reason I think it's important is because when you learn computer science, you understand principles of computational thinking through learning programming, and you can learn those outside learning programming in order to make us to understand technology better. There are lots of definitions of what computational thinking is. I've used this particular poster from Barefoot Computing, which is a project that we have full of fantastic resources for primary computing teachers, because this is a quite well-known offering of what is in computational thinking: logic, algorithms, decomposition, pattern recognition, abstraction, evaluation. You'll find another 10 versions of what computational thinking breaks down to elsewhere. But it's about solving problems, be able to break down that problem, be able to look for patterns, be able to eliminate unnecessary details. These are skills that you need in every curricular subject. So primary schools in England are able to teach computing alongside other subjects. And I saw a lovely illustration of a primary teacher teaching the pupils about the kings of England by using a bubble sort algorithm to get the kings in order using a sorting and queens, the kings and queens of England in order with a bubble sort algorithm. And the fourth reason is, I think we need to get the creativity into the classroom. We're not just using technology. We just don't want to know what the latest gadget is. We want to be able to be those creators of technology. And notice I haven't even mentioned the economic argument that we need more people understanding technology in the workplace. There are posts to be filled. Universities, there was a downturn in students doing computing at university, etc. Those four reasons are the reasons that I think that computing should be in the curriculum. So I'm now going to talk a little bit about how we're doing. So I haven't got lots of slides of children doing wonderful things in the classroom with computers and with technology, but they are. There are some fantastic teachers in England doing wonderful things with children. There are lots of examples where children just astound their teachers by what they're able to achieve. But I wanted to look a little bit about the uptake of computing, and then I want to focus the rest of the talk on how we're supporting teachers to be able to rise to this new challenge of delivering the computing curriculum. So I've just said earlier that we have a situation where all schools should offer computing in the form that I showed earlier from age 5 to 16 from the 1st September 2014. We have a slightly complicated situation in that we've also got some schools who are academies who can opt in and out of bits of the national curriculum as they wish to, but they still are tending to follow what is the national agreed curriculum. We also have qualifications, so we have a qualification age 14 to 16 that came in called computer science in September 2010. And then we have a qualification for 16 to 18-year-olds that's been around since the late 80s, and but has recently been revamped. So the first one of those was new, and we haven't got that much data because when the statistics muddled it up with the ICT qualifications initially, but I can show you that in the last year, the numbers taking that qualification doubled. So that's the level of the interest that there is in being able to take and pass GCSE in computing or computer science. And even more exciting, I think, is the A-level computing, which has been going steadily down. It's been going. I used to be an A-level computing teacher, and as class sizes were getting smaller, and you can see we've gone down. And then do you see what happened last year? Last year, the numbers achieving, so that's a 2-year course, so that goes back from 2. The numbers achieving A-level computing went up, and that's quite a significant move up. It's almost back to the level that we were at in 2007. So I think that's a really good indication of the interest that there is in doing this in school and following it on to qualifications. But we need teachers to deliver these qualifications, and the word on the ground is that actually there are more students and parents that are quite interested in taking these qualifications than there are teachers who feel confident to be able to teach some of the courses at GCSE and A-level. So what can we do to support teachers? There's 3 things to note about this curriculum. First of all, we didn't implement it incrementally. We didn't say in 40, right, we'll start with year 1, And then next year we'll move them up, and so we've got 2 years doing it. And then in 10 years' time, everybody will have done it. So the other thing to note, we didn't have an incremental introduction of the curriculum. The other thing to note is that we didn't have a top-down government-funded training programme where every teacher had to study what was coming in the new curriculum. And the third thing to note is the curriculum involves some programming, and that is not something that you can learn overnight. Programming, if you're a programmer, takes hours of practice, takes a while to embed those skills, and it just takes a little bit of learning. So we're going to be in a transition period while we prepare and support teachers, even though our curriculum is in. We've got teachers in all stages. We've got fantastic, excellent teachers who have been waiting for this to happen, teachers who've caught the bug and are doing really well, and teachers who are still lacking in confidence and need lots of support. So what support is available? We've got CPD available through a range of different organisations. Computing at School is one of them. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. I'm going to whiz through this slide so that I have enough time for that. We also have lots of resources available through Computing at School and through other organisations. And I left them in my bag, but I brought some of them with me, which you'll see on the screen up there. So we need support for in-service teachers. What about pre-service teachers? So I said for my job, I'm training new teachers. So we're taking computer science graduates. They train on the 1-year postgraduate course, and gradually we're drip feeding these new qualified computer science teachers into the system as qualified computer science secondary teachers. And we have an organisation called Computing at School. Can I just see how many people have actually heard of Computing at School? Just a few. Okay, so Computing at School is a grassroots organisation made up mostly of teachers, but also of people in higher education and in industry. Started with 5 people. In November, we have 20,000 members. It's very much a community. It's what we call a community of professional practice. It's not a top-down organisation. It's a bottom-up grassroots organisation based around the people that belong in it. The strap line for Computing at School is "There is no them, only us." And Computing at School is evolving. Initially, we were looking at the developing, influencing national policy and developing a curriculum for schools. Those sort of things have been achieved. We're now looking at directly supporting teachers on the ground. And the third thing to note about Computing at School is that it's a community for everybody. And teachers who join Computing at School have got as much opportunity to engage in what's going on and to share their opinions. And you can see there's some people making a big contribution, some people making little contributions, some just thinking about making a contribution, but Computing at School is something that everybody can get involved in. And we have a range of different activities, but primarily a lot of them are face-to-face, local, peer-to-peer support activities. And we've developed the idea of having Computing at School master teachers who are trained to support other teachers in the schools around them. We also have Computing at School hub meetings, which are run by voluntary hub leaders who meet, who hold meetings every term in schools, in their own school, to bring in other teachers around them. And we have universities that look after the master teachers and the hubs regionally. And my particular one that I'm involved with is CAS London, Computing at School London. So we're engaging teachers to support their peers. We're engaging anybody that wants to become a hub leader to run a hub in their school. And we're engaging university academics in computer science departments and in education departments to support teachers locally. We also have a community website where we have lots of discussions. We have an accreditation scheme now called the BCS Certificate in Computer Science Teaching. So those red dots on there show you where all the master teachers are. So we have nearly 400 master teachers appointed in England. This particular program has been funded by the Department for Education. They're able to run little training courses, they visit teachers in their schools, and they share what their best practice is. And being a master teacher is very empowering, and head teachers like to have somebody who's a master teacher in their school. And you can see we also have lots of hubs, and I don't want to repeat what I said over there, so I can move on to the other last 5 minutes of my talk. So on the website, if you go to computingatschool.org.uk, anybody can join. We have lots of international members. We've just opened a new hub in South Korea. Well, we haven't. The South Koreans have just opened a new hub in South Korea. We've got a hub in Belgium. We've got one in Thailand. So it's and we have lots of international members who join in the discussions and look at what's going on in there. We also have this wonderful thing called the resource area, and when I did a survey of 2,000 Computing at School members, this was their favourite bit. So this is where other teachers upload resources that they've used in their classroom to share with teachers, which we're very much in favour of the sort of methods that Larry finished talking about, the unplugged methods of teaching computing, looking at active learning and pedagogy, flipped classroom, all that sort of stuff. We're very enthusiastic about that, and we think the pedagogy of teaching computing is just as important as the subject knowledge. So just going to wrap up. We've got resources on there. There are some physical resources that I can show you in my bag. And I'm going to finish by showing you the model that we're using for training our teachers, which actually revolves around this community of professional practice, has some training, involves mentoring, a cascade element of using expertise in universities to train master teachers. So master teachers can train teachers in schools. And the last things I'm involved in is getting classroom-based research off the ground, getting teachers involved in research in how to teach computing in schools, and accrediting teachers. So, to finish, yes, we've got a revolution of computing. Yes, it focuses on computational thinking. It's definitely not just about coding, it's about principles. And we do have teachers who are trying to learn the new knowledge and skills. We are still in transition. Our bottom-up approach is trying to empower teachers to take ownership of what's going on in the curriculum. So keep watching what's happening in England. It's very exciting. It's fantastic for me to be part of it. Effective practice will take time, but I think we're getting there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sue. Now we have Fredrik Heinz, who is one of our most prominent people within this field in Sweden.
Thank you very much. Yes, so my name is Fredrik Heinz. I'm an AI researcher at Linköping University who is also very heavily involved in computer science education at all levels, from small kids to older adults at the university. So I would like to highlight one thing that I think is the most important part of this talk. And that is that computer science is a subject on par of mathematics that is useful and important to everyone. And that computer science is not just about programming, and that's not all of it. I mean, there is much more. There is a science behind computer science. And that is actually, what you say, it's not always recognized even at universities. I have discussions with people at university level which questions whether computer science is a proper subject. And I think that is the subject which lies behind much of digital technology today. So that I think is very important. And an aspect related to that, I was visiting Stanford 2 weeks ago, and there every single student at that university takes the introductory course in computer science. It's not because they have to, it's because they want to. They take this subject because they know that is the thing I need to learn no matter what I will do in my professional life. So that, I think, is the most important part of this talk, that it's not just about programming. And one thing I wanted to add regarding it is, how do we get the teachers involved? So I think the teachers are the most important part of this. I mean, if we want to get this into schools, we need the teachers to do it. We from the outside cannot do it. And what I have learned is that the best way to do it is actually start from their subjects. So in Sweden, it's not likely that computer science will be its own subject, at least in K-9 education, but that we can use to our benefit to say that, I mean, you as a Swedish teacher or you as a math teacher, here is how this applies to you. Here is how you can use computer science in your subject, and start from their subject knowledge and then show how they can extend that further through computer science. Thank you very much.